All right, I think we're good. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this agriculture webinar set up by Choice Energy for reducing your energy business costs in 2021 and beyond. I'm Tim Withers, the AUSVEG VIC State Manager. AUSVEG VIC represent Victorian and vegetable growers in Victoria. So this webinar, as I'm sure you're all aware, we're currently during the second year of the coronavirus pandemic. It's incredibly timely to start talking about ways in which you can reduce costs, in order to operate, you're going to have those costs anyway. So we've got increased costs in global logistics, getting parts for capital equipment, cost of inputs. So reducing your energy costs is something that it's tangible, and it's something that you can do yourselves. So I think looking at every single opportunity in which it's easy to make a quick switch and reduce your costs is something that is certainly something to at least be aware of. So things like there was a Victorian state government agriculture energy investment plan project, which found some incredible results, being that 47% of all of agriculture energy costs emanated to the horticulture industry. So being the one commodity group, there was a huge amount of energy consumed by horticulture, of which 48% of all potential savings across all of agriculture was horticulture. So, vegetables being the highest of all hort commodities, both in protected cropping and field growing environments. So, and solar was actually seen as the best option. Obviously, it depends on the circumstance and the business setup, but solar was seen as by far the most viable solution for businesses currently. And that was a solar system under the 50 kilowatts option. So I encourage all participants to put in your questions via the Q&A button down the bottom of this webinar, and stick around to the very end, because our panel of experts are going to be answering all of those questions for you today. So I'd just like to invite Alan Gill, who's the Executive Director of Choice Energy, to provide a national energy update now.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Fantastic to be here, and thanks to everybody online and to our panelists for being here today. I'm just going to run through what's been happening to the energy market from a national perspective, and then really what that means to agri-businesses. So in February of 2021, we saw a 5-year low of wholesale market prices. So the energy market works in much the same way as the stock market might work. There's ebbs and flows, and the cost of buying wholesale power can peak and trough as well. So in February, we saw that we saw that decrease to a 5-year low since around the same sort of time in 2016. Now, what COVID has done nationally in the way that we demand and consume energy has meant that we're going to consume and demand energy differently forever, just in the same way as we're going to work differently forever. We'll take the best practice out of the constraints that we've had, and we'll move forward and try and normalize as much as possible. So you would have seen from sort of August last year through to around sort of December, the market was relatively stable, albeit low compared to previous years due to COVID. But really the thing that created very artificially low prices for 5 years was one of the coolest summers we've had in some reports were sort of saying a couple of decades. So that created an artificially low demand. If you think that most places didn't need to turn on the AC as much as we would like to, and enjoy the sun a little bit more. It was very cool over the last summer, and that created some very low prices. But as you can see from the graph, it moves up to around where we are now. We went from a price of around sort of $38 per megawatt hour up to around sort of 60. The real reason for that incline was obviously the way in which pricing works in most markets is based on supply and demand. And unfortunately, the thing that affected this the most was the supply. So there was a fire and a flood at Collide and Yallourn power stations. So these are coal-fired power stations that provide a percentage of the energy which goes right across the national energy market. So all states, bar WA and Northern Territories. And that did drive the prices back up to higher levels that we had seen previously. So it's been a tough year to be a retailer, and don't get your tissues out too quickly. They've had a lot of good years, but it has been really tough for them over the sort of COVID period, particularly if they own generation assets. And Origin and AGL are two great examples really here. They own a lot of the coal-fired power stations that we'll be talking about today. And we've seen a reduction in their share price, respectively, 48% and 67% over that period, as they grapple with the new way in which energy has been demanded, the artificially low prices, so the value of wholesale power, but also a reduction in the value of their assets as well. So just in the last few weeks, Origin wrote down $1.5 billion in asset value of just one of their power stations in New South Wales. And that's because the financial viability of running a coal-fired power station is decreasing at an accelerated rate, a lot faster than was predicted just as recent as 2 years ago. Certainly in terms of building generation assets, it doesn't make sense to build coal-fired power stations anymore. You will get a better return to go look at renewable options like solar farms, but even just the running of them, the financial viability is going down month by month. So we do expect prices to rebound. It's very unlikely, albeit weather patterns aside, that we would see a repeat of the lows in February 2021. But we do expect them to return because at the prices that we've seen, Origin and AGL can't continue to generate at a profit. And so, like in all markets, something will have to give. And we expect that the prices to rebound and recover and soar upwards. So what does that mean for you as an agri business? There's a few things that you can do to avoid getting caught out and being one of the businesses that has to pay for that sort of return to pricing. The lockdowns that we're seeing at the moment around the country seem to be extended for the short term, but certainly the ability to work from home has meant that the use of electricity at homes will create a higher demand during the summer than we might have seen in sort of December 2019 and previous. So a hot summer is going to vastly increase the demand as everybody uses the AC at home, which they might not have done otherwise in previous years. And obviously, agri businesses are very different to a lot of large consumers of electricity. Typically at Choice Energy, we will deal with businesses in retail, businesses in agri, manufacturing, very common. These are all very large users of power, but with agri businesses, it is very much the load profile of those businesses is very, very different due to the use of things like pumps and larger land areas to cover. And so the ability for retailers to service agri businesses with a decent price point is very, very different. So you can't compare the price that a manufacturer is paying and expect an agri business to benefit from the same kind of rates because they have different challenges when it comes to consuming electricity. And so my advice is to find a retailer that has hedged or they've bought from the forward market, the wholesale market, in a different way to other retailers, so that your load profile, albeit very different from a manufacturing business, could be extremely appealing to a certain type of retailer that has load during those times of the day to retail to you. But a lot of these retailers are not that well known. You won't see them on a billboard driving down Punt Road for the Victorians online. These are business only. A lot of them are business only retailers. And so my advice would be to get out to market to as many retailers as possible, because you just don't know who's going to be able to give you the best price. So tips for keeping your costs low: never ever wait, and this really goes not just to agri businesses but across all businesses. Never wait till the end of your contract to negotiate. They always say the strongest thing to bring to a negotiation is a strong alternative. If your contract is expiring, you really don't have an alternative, because you're going to be buying power anyway. And if you let it expire, you go on to what's called emergency rates, which can be as much as double what you're currently paying. So the alternative is not really there. So take that away from the retailers when you're negotiating, and make sure that you arrange your next contract well in advance of the expiration of your current one. And often forward contracting can be a great strategy for that. So we had a lot of customers in February 2021, when the prices were artificially low, arrange their next contract up to 2 years in advance. So lots of our customers had contract start dates for the 1st of January 2024, and those contracts could last anything up to 4 or 5 years as well. So getting your timing right, it can make the difference of tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars for your business over the contract period. And work with an energy consultancy to make sure that your exact load profile is taken when you're tendering. If you're just saying, here's an indicative amount of power that I might be using when speaking with retailers, they're going to have to price in some kind of premium for risk, because they don't know exactly how you've used power. But a good energy consultant will take a half-hour interval over a 365-day view of your interval data. They'll take that to tender and say, we don't know how this customer is going to be using power for the next 365 days, because we don't have a crystal ball, but here's how they have used power. It means that the retailers can sharpen their pencil a lot, because they can reduce the risk at the price that they're going to have to supply it to you. Get your bills validated. We see around about 30% of bills are incorrect, and that's no real sort of malice intent. Nobody's trying to pull the wool over your eyes, but just there's lots of complex parts to an energy bill. When you pay your bill to your retailer, that essentially you're funding clean energy through environmentals, you're paying for metering, you're paying for the poles and the wires and the transmission and distribution, and you're paying your retailer for the privilege of selling you that power as well. And there's lots of different moving parts, so often those parts can be incorrect. So make sure you get your bills validated to ensure that you're just not overpaying due to billing errors. Now, I spoke just briefly there about the poles and the wires. Point 4 here is that every year, the guys that own the poles and the wires will make new tariffs available to you. So they're not obligated to tap you on the shoulder and say, by the way, there's a new tariff which better suits the way you're consuming and demanding electricity, and you could be paying, for example, $12,000 less by moving to this new tariff at any point. It's got nothing to do with your retail contract. They're not obliged to do that. So make sure you're working with a consultancy or someone who understands the network costs and doing a review at least once a year. And then the fifth thing here, which my colleague Lachlan's going to talk to you about a little bit more in detail, is look into generating your own power. Through solar, often that can be a lot cheaper than buying it from the grid. So if you can get yourself to a position where you're cash flow neutral or cash flow positive, then not only does that lower your operational costs, but you're actually paying off an asset rather than just paying an energy bill. So I'm going to hand over to Lachlan, who's one of our fellow directors here at Choice Energy. He looks after the renewable side of our business and has a lot of experience. He'll be talking with Sam about his experience in his venture into renewables. Over to you, Lachlan.
Thank you, Alan, and nice to be with everyone today. The purpose of my few slides in the presentation today is really trying to cut through one of the biggest barriers to entry that we see the agribusinesses facing, which is there's too much information out there really about solar, batteries, which are the best systems, what size do you need, what sort of government incentives are there. A lot of that as well, there's a lot of media attention, which actually confuses the issue. So what I'll be aiming to do today is try and cut through some of the essential information that businesses need to focus on and leave all the noise and the hot air for the media and for their other pundits. So Where we're going to start with is looking at, the past, the present, and the future of the solar industry in Australia, and some really important talking points that I think people should be aware of. The first one being that the price or the cost of solar solutions has fallen by just over 80% in the past 10 years. So that's been a dramatic shift with economies of scale of the production of the equipment, more efficiencies in manufacturing. That's the primary driver. But we're now at a point over the last couple of years where it's stabilized. So there's not going to be any real big reductions in the cost of solar solutions going forward. Nothing that we can see or the industry can see overall. One of the other major talking points in the industry is the number of solar companies that have come and gone over the years. There's now over 900, so ticking up towards 1,000. There's estimates out there based on the AUSVEG data that as many as 70% of the solar businesses that have existed since 2011 have either gone out of business or they've shut down an ABN and do what we call phoenixing, which is to put a new ABN in a family member's name, and then they start up under the same trading name. And all of these things are disastrous for business owners who are investing in a 20 to 25 to 30-year solution. It's just not a very good way of going about it. And as I mentioned before, there's a lot of confusion over, for example, the best equipment and install methodology. So a lot of the marketing hype around, particular types of technology. At the end of the day, where solar long-term has a really good benefit is with a trusted relationship. That's what we believe in. Someone who's actually going to be there to pick up the phone in the future or look after you if you run into issues, much more so than all the marketing hype around particular products and services, etc. So there's some resources on our website too about a lot of solar companies that have gone defunct. We're actually doing a lot of maintenance work at the moment, trying to help people who fall into this predicament. But that's a little bit of a snapshot about the history of the solar industry in Australia. So some considerations for solar that I'd encourage everyone to think a little bit deeply about. The number one, as I mentioned, is your solar installer going to be around in the future? If you end up with an orphaned system, this is the term that's used in the industry for business owners who've installed solar but don't have any backup in terms of the people who installed it. What you want to have, obviously, is someone who's around to be able to, as I said, pick up the phone and look after you. And that relies on a diverse business model. So one of the traps that solar companies have fallen into, as Alan mentioned, you hit COVID, consumer, confidence and whatnot is down, power prices are all over the place. And if all you do is install solar panels on different factories, you don't have that diversity in your business model to be able to weather those tough times. And unfortunately, the way the government has chopped and changed between different rebate schemes, a lot of solar companies set up their businesses on certain rebates that were available. And when the rug is pulled out from underneath them, they disappear, which is obviously why at Choice Energy, we're not just reliant on one or two services to help us get by. There's about 7 services we offer for businesses. The other thing to consider, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. That old adage with most things in life. One of those being, this idea that if you just fill your entire roof with solar panels, you're going to have no bill. That's one that you'll hear a lot. If you're hearing about unbelievably short paybacks, 18 months, 12 months, 6 months, it's not realistic in terms of what solar does for you long term. And what we found, unfortunately, over the last 10 years, and the research and all of the information suggests this, is the most expensive way to install solar is to go with the cheapest possible solution. And the reason for that is you can spend as much as 50% of the install cost to replace, repair, maintain, service cheaper systems, which after 3 to 4 years have major issues. Whereas if you get a system which might not be the cheapest solution, but certainly at the higher quality end, you should be getting a minimum of 15 odd years out of your inverters and a minimum of 25 years out of your solar panels. Very, very important that long term, obviously, those savings compound. And if it only lasts for 3 to 4 years, you're really going to cut short your savings performance. And then probably the most important thing is, outside of all the manufacturer's warranties and the product warranties, does your installer give you a written guarantee, or is anything in writing about what the system will actually do? Because everything looks great in a spreadsheet or a graph or a nice shiny proposal with some marketing material on it. But if there's nothing in writing that says you're guaranteed a minimum standard from the installation, then unfortunately you're really rolling the dice and taking on the risk, because even if you can get, replacements and warranties from the manufacturers, it doesn't cover you if there's an installation fault from the installer, which is the number one reason why systems don't perform long term. So some important considerations there about what to try and avoid, because unlike a lot of assets, for example, a new car, you can't just simply replace a solar system, throw it away and get a new one. You do have that infrastructure for a long time. So you obviously want to do your research beforehand. And specific to agriculture businesses, these are some of the benefits and some of the things to think about as well if you are considering solar. There's two main drawers of power that we consistently see on most of the agribusiness sites. Number one is some sort of centralized pack house, warehouse, or refrigerated shed, where a lot of the stock is stored and distributed out of, typically with a central building attached to its own meter. And then you also will have a number of separate meters that are attached to, for example, pumps or irrigation equipment, which is, as I mentioned, the secondary source of power that's used on most of the farms. Solar is very effective being installed on a building which has a direct feed into a meter, simply because we're able to utilize the available roof area, and it's quite a neat and clean install. When you have multiple pumps that are spread out over potentially many hectares or acres, they could be, for example, hundreds of meters away from a supply point. Logistically, to install solar panels on the ground on what we call a ground mount solution and having to run cabling into those supply points becomes very logistically challenging. It also becomes a lot more expensive. And one of the other issues with offsetting pumps or irrigation is that a lot of that usage is intermittent. So the pumps don't always run 12 months a year at a very flat rate, which is what solar is really designed to offset. If you're only running pumps, for example, 3 months of the year, all of that solar generation that you're creating will go back onto the grid for a very small, feed-in tariff. Or in worst case scenarios, a lot of the power companies aren't even taking that power onto the grid. So you'll actually get no return on investment. So if you are considering solar, certainly for a pack house or a refrigerated warehouse, that would be the go as the low-hanging fruit. Alan mentioned different tariffs. So when you're buying power for a business, the most expensive tariff is daytime power. That's when there's the most demand on the grid. Solar operates from about 7:30 in the morning till about 4:30 in the evening, give or take different times of year. And that's when it offsets your most expensive part of power. If you do have refrigeration needs to try and keep your stock, nice and fresh, refrigeration will work that little bit harder during the summer months when solar produces its highest output. But the panels also have a bit of an insulation benefit. So on the attached image there, you can see that if half the roof is covered, it does provide that little bit of cooling effect. They predict somewhere between 5 to 10% in terms of temperature. And then obviously another huge important step at this stage is the carbon offset or the green credentials that might be important to some of your suppliers. So you can actually calculate a whole bunch of different green metrics about why solar or how solar can help your green footprint. And that's something that your installer should be able to help you with. But it's a good thing to be able to spruik from a marketing point of view. So there's some of the reasons and some of the little insights into how it can work for an agribusiness. And at this stage, I'd like to introduce Sam Taranto, the director of Taranto Farms, just to go through a little bit of a quick Q&A about his experience working with Choice Energy and having solar installed, and give some key insights as to how it all worked for Sam. Beautiful. All right. So Sam, just to start off with, it might help everyone on the call to understand a little bit about what sparked your interest in wanting to install solar or go down that path a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it actually started when I went to one of your forums over at Peter Shaw's and Sons. And then from there, we sort of looked into it and talked to a few different companies and ended up going towards Choice and we're happy with, what was offered and subsequently did the deal.
Yeah. Fantastic. No, thanks for that, Sam. And how did you find, obviously, solar, there's a time, obviously, you run through a business case, but then there's a bit of a process to get you through to the point of installation and the on-site installation. How did you find that application process and the install process in terms of being able to run your business and just focus on your day-to-day?
Once we agreed on what was going to happen, it was just a matter of, Choice did all the paperwork, you guys did it all. We sort of waited, and there was an install date, and up it went, and it was actually quite easy. We didn't have to worry about it once it was all done, so it was good.
Yeah, fantastic. And do you mind just sharing a few insights on what some of the other promises or some of the other ideas were from other providers around, for example, system sizing and some of the things you were told, getting different sort of opinions from other companies?
Yeah, well, we had quotes from 2 or 3 other companies, and both quoted really quite large systems. And then we met with Choice later, it was pointed out that the systems, as you said earlier in your talk, that the buyback in the grid doesn't really pay. So to have a zero bill, they were just really selling bigger systems, and it was required just to sell bigger systems, basically for their own good. And we were going to get not much benefit out of the fact that by putting power in the grid doesn't pay. So, we've noticed with the power supply now, on a big day we run just behind, but if it's a nice day and we're not super busy or it's not super hot, we're breaking even for the day. So we're pretty happy with that. And then obviously nighttime, the core and door stays shut, and it's not too bad.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. That's good to hear. Yeah, there's certainly a conflict of interest out there. Unfortunately, the bigger systems actually attract bigger rebates for installers. So just another little thing for people to look out for. It should never be about how much you can fit. It should always be tailored towards the needs of the individual business. So thanks for sharing that, Sam. And I guess, would there be any other final points or things that you'd recommend for other agri businesses or farm owners to look out for when going down the path of looking into solar?
Oh, look, from what I said, from what we heard and we got told was, avoid the big systems if we can, and hopefully, we've only just short term into ours. And in saying that too, with the storm damage, we lost a few panels and made the call, and within a week we're up and running again. So we can't complain about the service that's been provided, that's for sure.
Great. Well, thanks. Thank you for those insights, Sam. Good to hear about your experience, and appreciate you sharing that with everyone. Got just a couple more slides to take everyone through, just a few more little tidbits. One thing that's always out there, and we probably get a question every day about where are batteries at in terms of technology. Again, one of the things you hear a lot about in the media, but realistically, we've been running the sums on batteries since 2014, so coming up 7 years now. And still batteries are years away from being commercially viable. So obviously a big operation like Sam's, for example, lots of refrigeration, batteries just do not have the capability to be able to handle that sort of power draw. And every estimate in terms of payback that we run, at an absolute best case scenario, you'll have about a 12-year payback. And many of the other sums that we've run over the years have been 20 years plus. So the technology of all the major brands, whether you're looking at LG, Tesla, Samsung, etc., all have about a 10 to 12 year lifespan. So you won't even pay off the system before you get your return on investment. And from a green and environmental point of view, that battery, which is full of, heavy metal and lithium and a whole bunch of other, quite toxic material in some ways, you'll be disposing of that into, some sort of landfill setup as well. So it's not a very green thing at this stage if you can't get that return. But like solar dropped 80% in the last decade, batteries are actually going through the same transformation, and we're right in the middle of that at the moment. There's going to be significant downwards movement in the next 3 to 5 years, and that's simply due to the expansion, like with solar, of the manufacturing capabilities. So all the major tech companies are now putting their best foot forward to try and massively increase their production, which will drive down the cost. So what we're saying to the market is just hold off for now. In 3 to 5 years, we're probably going to be in a much better solution or situation to see what the best solution is. And all we'd say is that have your system be hybrid or future-proofed. And just to finish off with, I won't, bore everyone on the legislation of each of these different rebates, but many solar systems now qualify for a whole host of different federal and state rebates. So again, one of the benefits of talking to a professional company is understanding which of these that you're actually eligible for. There's small scale rebates, large scale rebates, there's instant asset tax write-offs, there's a number of agriculture grants as it relates to energy, as well as state solar rebates. So be more than happy to chat to anyone who wants a little bit more information about what they might be eligible for. But that's all from me today. Appreciate everyone being attentive, and I'll hand back to Alan to give us a bit of an idea about the future energy market outlook.
Perfect. Thank you, Lachlan. Yeah, look, it's an interesting point about the incentives there. One of the reasons I get on well with my tax accountant is because he's a tax geek, and I trust him. He reduces my tax as much as possible and keeps me out of jail. And tax is something that I continue to have to do. I think energy is much the same. You can get very, very geeky about it. Most people don't want to, but they do want to work with somebody that is passionate about it and keeping their eye on the market. Now, I often get asked, I don't know if anyone remembers those things called barbecues pre sort of 2019 or 2020, but one of my favorite reasons for moving to Australia 10 years ago was the barbecue. And people have always asked me, what's going to happen in energy? Now, I've got a fairly good idea of the trends that we've seen, and we all know that hindsight gives us a 2020 view. But anybody sort of proclaiming to have a crystal ball and being able to see exactly what's going to happen is probably dealing in snake oil, and you should stay away from those people. So no one really knows, and we have seen that the market is and will continue to be very volatile. But I think there's a few things which would be some safe bets. So those incentives that Lachlan mentioned just then, not just from the ATO, but also federal and state-based environmental and clean energy fund incentives, they typically will reduce year on year. We've seen them reduce, so we do expect them to go out in the market. The whole point of them was to get participation, to get people onto the market. So the more people that participate and the longer that time goes on, generally we see the funding pools begin to shrink. So we would expect those over the next few years to continue to be reduced. But the incentives for going solar will definitely be around until at least June 2023, what we're seeing at the moment. So if you are thinking about going solar, you should do that and get it installed sooner rather than later. The current incentives that we've got, particularly around the instant asset tax write-off, won't be around forever. As I mentioned earlier, energy prices will increase. To what level, we don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see for any energy geeks online what the difference of 5-minute settlements will bring to the market as opposed to the current 30-minute settlements. My bet would be that those in control of generation would look to bring the closure forward of their power stations as they become less and less commercially viable. So I would expect energy prices to increase. If we're reducing the supply and without reducing the demand, then obviously, like all market conditions, that's what we would expect to happen to energy prices. Now, I mentioned earlier that I work with a tax accountant for my tax. What we're seeing in the market is that most people now that are paying a lot for power, so really anybody that's spending more than sort of $1,500 a month on power is working with an energy consultancy. So certainly we'd expect more and more of those companies to come on, not our books, but certainly into our industry and work with an energy expert over the next sort of year or so. It just doesn't make sense to continue to go to market for something that is relatively complex to find the ultimate efficiencies. So yeah, I certainly expect users of large energy to turn to experts more and more. All right, going to turn over to questions for the panel, and I think back to Tim. So if you've got any questions for us, please shout them out or raise them in the Q&A. I can see there's some already there. Sam, this is one for you actually. Where are the energy, sorry, what sort of agribusiness are you operating and where are your energy demands? I think we've got you on mute at the moment, Sam.
There we go.
There we go. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, we're vegetable growers, and so our main demands are, well, Coram runs day and night, and every day of the year, and then our shed work is obviously, you know, between 6 and 5, I suppose. So our main demands is daylight, and then Coram all night. But yeah.
Thanks, mate. I've got another one here, a question for you, Sam, whilst we've got you. Your decision to go solar, was that purely economic, or were you influenced from an environmental or image perspective to show sustainability in your supply chain and with your customers?
No, it's purely economic. Yeah.
That's we find that the same way, that if the environmental things, sort of byproducts are, everyone wants to do their best, but if you make it easier, if you look after the wallet first, it makes it much easier to shrink your carbon footprint that way. We do a bunch of work across Australia and New Zealand, and we often find that there are economic drivers. You know, currently you're paying an energy bill that's X, and if you have solar, your OPEX is going to be less. That's a good reason to do anything, right? And if carbon footprint is a result of that, a reduction of your carbon footprint, then that's a good thing as well. So yeah, that's very common there. A question for you, Sam, again. I'll turn over to myself or Lachlan in a moment, but there's a lot coming through from you for you. Okay, so how does the solar system monitoring work for you as a customer? What do you see?
Well, we can watch it minute by minute. Basically, you can watch a graph if you like, and it shows you power, like what you're producing, what you're using, and obviously then what's coming in from the grid. So if I'm in the office, I'll often have a look just to see, just for interest's sake. Not so much now. When we first went in, I was doing it quite regularly, just to, obviously it's a new novel thing, but now I probably don't look. But where the inverters are, I walk past sometimes and just see on different days to see how much power it's actually producing, just to keep an eye on myself, so I know what actually does happen on different days.
Yeah, we find that from a monitoring point of view. Often when we phone a customer and we say, you know, your system's offline, it could be as simple as your Wi-Fi's down, you've changed Wi-Fi providers, but for us, there's alarm bells that go off, and we phone the customer and they say, oh, is it off, is it? You know, the first couple of months, you want to know that the system's doing what it said it would do. But then after that, you know, you want to get on with your business and just know that it's working in the background. Lockie, from a sort of solutions point of view, what can our customers, or what should customers expect from a solar system with regards to, you know, the shiny toy is 6 months old now, and you're confident that it works. What should you expect from a provider thereafter, sort of month by month in monitoring?
Yeah, I think definitely initially, as Sam said, when it's all new and a bit unknown, you really need your installer to walk you through what the numbers actually mean, because anyone can go online and see, you know, all sorts of different, you know, statistics and efficiencies and, you know, different numbers, kilowatt hours, kilovolt amps, kilowatts. What does it all really mean as in terms of what you're looking at? So I think giving a business owner comfort around, here are the main things to look out for, here's what the performance is doing, here's how it operates over the course of a year, and then just be there to answer any questions as well. Because I mean, it's, you know, don't expect anyone to be an electrical engineer who installs solar. It should just be running through the basics of what you're looking at and giving them comfort that, you know, they're getting their return on investment in the right space of time.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Thank you. Back to you, Sam. Is there anything that you wish you had known rather before you installed a solar system, or are there any unexpected benefits?
No, I wouldn't think there's anything unexpected. No, it all going as promised. So I know I was pretty happy with the whole result.
And is there anything before sort of going with solar that you wish you had known? Just from a sort of solutions perspective, or the sort of owning system?
No, probably I would have gone a little bit bigger on the system, just to cater for maybe the when you haven't got the full sunshine. Maybe not doubling up or tripling up or more what the other companies were saying, but probably just overcapitalise a little bit. And I think it might have been a good result. But other than that, I mean, and the promise was we can add to this system to do that later on anyway. So I'm not too concerned. We're going to run it for 12 months and see how it looks, and then go from there.
Thank you. That brings me to another question here. I've got from Philip. He's already got solar. Lachlan, this would be to you, I think. He's already got solar, but his production has increased since he installed it. Is it easy enough to add more panels?
Yeah, it's a good question. One we get a lot now, especially as businesses change and develop. And as Sam mentioned there, the pragmatic thing is always to try and install what you need at the time, because if you have more roof area available, then you can really scale the system larger to the point that you actually require. So one of the key things is, roof availability. There is potentially a step that you need to take with your local network provider. So they won't just allow you to install a solar farm on your site. You do have to get their approval. But these days, if you've got an original connection, then upgrading your solar system tends to be a bit of a smoother process. So those would be the two main things, but it would always be based on, can you actually use that extra power? Don't go bigger just because, you're trying to feed power back into the grid or anything like that. Make sure you need it. And it's always good to, I think Sam's point was really good, do a full 12-month review first to make sure that there is a business case to upgrade. Otherwise, we just don't want anyone throwing money away on more panels. Yeah.
Thank you. Another one for you, Lockie, from Daniel. Does roof orientation matter for solar? Can you install on a mostly south or west facing roof?
Yeah, good question. Roof orientation does matter a significant amount, and basically the way we are in the southern hemisphere, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west and comes across the northern sky. So if you do put panels flat facing south, you will have a significant decrease in the amount of solar produced, especially during the months where the sun's a little bit lower in the sky. They'll effectively be not receiving a huge amount of sunlight for significant parts of the year. So getting your orientation right, or manipulating your orientation using tilt frame technology or different brackets so they can try and face north, is very, very important, because some of the systems that we see that are installed on the wrong orientation can lose up to 20 to 30% of their overall production over the lifespan. And that's might not sound like much, but if the system's designed to save you $500,000 over its lifespan, 30%, that starts to add up. That's nearly 150 grand that you could be missing out on. So you don't want to, I guess, cut corners in that process. It has to be designed, properly.
Just in that design, Lachlan. So if someone's spending, $600 or $700 per month, is it worth them looking at solar?
Yeah, look, definitely, because $600 to $700 a month is creeping up towards 10 grand a year. Over the next decade, that's six figures that you'll be spending on power. So it's not like it's a small expense in the long run. I would say for any business that's spending, more than say $300 or $200 a month, it would certainly be worth having the conversation, because at the end of the day, a dollar saved is a dollar earned, especially in this economy where things are uncertain. So even if you could save $4 or $5 grand a year, that's money you keep in your pocket versus passing along to an AGL or an Origin who've been benefiting up until this year on that sort of system.
And then I guess once you've paid off that system, so you're making the savings in real time, the way that you're sort of operating your business. Once you've paid off that system, what does that mean? Firstly, for your operational expenditure, and then does the system add to the value of the building? How does that work?
Yeah, so once the infrastructure is paid for, then all of the power that you're producing is free. So between the hours of 8 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the evening, obviously a little bit dependent on weather, depending if it's cloudy or overcast or bright sunshine, but every kilowatt hour, which is the unit of power that you get charged from your power company, every kilowatt hour that you produce yourself is money that's going directly back into your business. And because the systems these days, as I mentioned, they'll have a 25-year plus lifespan. That's a long period of time where you're not paying for a pretty significant cost for a lot of businesses. And the other question you asked, Alan, was around what happens, for example, if after 20 years that you go to sell the site or sell the business. Well, if it's creating a positive cash flow for your business, it's saving you 10 grand a year. That obviously comes off your bottom line and your business looks a fair bit more attractive from a numbers point of view. But if you sell the building and it's got its own cost-saving power station, we believe that most commercial buildings in the future will have solar, and there'll be a tangible value to buying a building with solar and a cost-saving asset, as opposed to an identical building that doesn't have any cost saving associated with it. It's just sort of pure economics from a investment point of view.
It sort of goes back to Sam's point about the wallet first, do it for the economic reasons. That makes sense. Thank you. Question here from Beck. I've used comparison sites before to review my rates. Is there anything I need to be wary of? Yeah, sure. So there's nothing wrong with a comparison site. They're not illegal or anything like that. But we would say that if you're an agri business, as I said previously, what you want to do is take a very, very detailed tender to the market so that the energy providers know exactly what they're bidding on. So really, if you're looking at electricity or gas for your home, then those rates are kind of bundled up. But if you're looking at and Choice Energy can help you with those, but so can a comparison site as well. What I would say is when you're looking at electricity for your business, you really need to have a look at the granularity. And Lachlan alluded to it earlier with use of pumps, really the seasonality of your businesses as well, because that can make all the difference in the pricing that retailers will provide for you when they're bidding with your business. So nothing wrong with comparison sites, but I personally believe, if you could do a comparison site for your tax, you would probably still want to work with an expert for your tax, and the same would go for energy. So working with a consultant gives you a little bit more of a bespoke outcome, and it means that providers don't have to price in the premium of risk in your rates as well. So thank you for that one. Then there's another one here. Hello all. Alan mentioned getting a second bill on a second opinion on costs. How do you go about doing that, and who should you speak to in the first opinion? It's a great question. It kind of all roads lead to Rome when it comes back to the answer on anything energy, really, and that is to work with someone who fully understands it, being a consultant, and also just providing them a copy of your bill. So in terms of the costs needed to come up with an energy saving strategy, it's about 5 minutes of your time, $0, or it should be $0, and a copy of your bill. That will give your consultant everything that they would need to get started, and then they should be able to come back to you with a strategy as to how you can save money. The worst case would be that they come back to you and say you've pretty much optimized every single energy cost that you've got, and so you can have peace of mind knowing that you're not overpaying. Yeah, so that's fairly straightforward. Work with an expert, provide a copy of your bill. Any other questions at all? No. Okay. I think we're done there. There's one in the chat here. Let's have a quick look. No, all good. So we'll wrap up now. And thank you very much for attending this afternoon. We will correspond to all the registrants following the webinar, and we look forward to speaking with any or many of you soon. Thank you.